Hey, how are you?
I'm good, man. How about you?
Good.
Warren.
Joe. So do we call you Joe or do we call you Otis?
You can call me whatever you want. Most people call me Otis. My real name is Joe Begale.
Joe Begale.
Joe Begale. And all my fans know that that's my real name, but everybody calls me Otis. Some people call me Jodis. You know.
Jodis.
Yeah.
So it's Otis McDonald.
Otis McDonald.
That's your YouTube channel. That's your artist name.
That's correct.
But you're Joe Begale.
And that's how I produce and also mix records under that name as well.
Well, it's a great looking room. We've got a little bit of a history lesson on just how many incredible records were made here in this room at Hyde Street.
Yeah.
This is Studio D?
This is Studio D. I moved to San Francisco 22 years ago because I was...
From where?
I'm from Rochester, New York originally.
Oh, okay.
That's the reason I got that Steve Gadd doll over there. I'm a drummer as well.
Ah, I see.
Rochester,
Steve
New York,
Gadd
man.
doll.
Steve Gadd, man. Come on.
Oh, come on. This is worth a... Look at that. Steve, look at you.
If you're a drummer from Rochester, New York, it's hard to find a better drummer. You know, I'm more of a hero than Steve Gadd, you know?
Yeah.
But I moved here 22 years ago because I did have family that was out here, so I had a connection here. But I was obsessed with all of Herbie Hancock's funk records. Headhunters, Thrust, Manchild, and Secrets.
Yeah.
I came out here because I was obsessed with that Bay Area funk sound. Sly Stone, Herbie, Tower of Power.
All good things to be obsessed with.
Yeah, exactly. And I started the Otis McDonald thing about 10 years ago, and when that started to take off and I actually started to make some money, my wife and I had our first kid, and we were feeling a little more secure. And, of course, my studio was at home in one of our bedrooms in our two-bedroom flat. Yeah. And we were anticipating our son, he was going to need a room. And so I went on Craigslist and just went into the rental market and typed in recording studio. Up popped Studio D, Hyde Street, the room where Herbie Hancock made all those records.
That's insane.
Yeah. I had kind of heard through the grapevine that there was a room available, and I had never been here before. I used to work at Coast Recorders, and I worked a lot at Fantasy. In fact, I have some gear that came from Fantasy when they closed. I called Jack, our studio manager, and I said, hey, I'm in New York, but I'm going to be home in 2 days. Is that room available? And he said there was one other party looking at it, which I heard ended up being like an adult film company or something. So that would have changed the vibe in the building. Yeah.
That wouldn't have been a good idea.
So my wife and I came here with our 2-month-old in his stroller, and I walked right in here, and I was like, oh, man, yeah, this like feels like a Bill Putnam room. Which I don't know if you know the story of this particular room.
I don't know the story of this room.
So Wally Hyder, who was a protege of Bill's, was working at what is now East West Studios. I believe it was called Western back in the day.
Yeah, there was United and Western.
And there was Western, yeah. Wally's favorite room there was Studio 3.
Sure.
Which is where the Mamas and the Papas, and the Beach Boys made Pet Sounds and other timeless records. And so when he closed up shop in L.A. and moved up here to open up Wally Hyder Studios, he cloned that room, Studio 3.
Okay. I know that room very well.
Well, okay, so look, it's actually a mirror image. So the entrance would be on this side with the ramp going down. And the dimensions, do you want to come in here?
Yeah.
The dimensions of this room are identical. It's just the interior is different. But you have the jagged wall on this side, the flat wall on this side.
Oh, wow.
You can see the ceiling is slanted down, going the other direction that it does at Studio 3. And then, of course, the floor is flat. But, yeah, nothing parallel. Even the way this is set up and the way it looks going into the control room.
I love it. This is a gorgeous room.
It's a gorgeous room. They call it a shoebox shape. Sorry you saw all my storage back there.
No, it's great. I love it.
Unfortunately, the room didn't come with a lot of storage, and I had a lot of equipment when I moved in here.
It's amazing.
It's amazing that I had most of this stuff at my old home.
You got a pair of D19s on the drums here.
Oh, well, I'm a huge Beatles nut, man.
Right.
D19s, I got a D20 on the kick drum here. And,
is that an Altec?
No, man, that's an RCA. It's a BK1A from the 40s.
BK1A, oh.
Yeah, and actually, funny story about those, I have a pair of these. This is one of the pair. Yeah. And that came from my good buddy Scott.
Oh, you've got a spare one. I mean,
yeah. It came from my good buddy Scott Amendola, a legendary drummer in the Bay, whose grandfather used to play in the Tonight Show big band with Steve Allen, that Tonight Show.
Yeah.
And those were the microphones on the desks for the guests. And he sold them to me a few years ago.
Oh,
and
wonderful.
So it's a nice pedigree. But a lot of people know me for my drum sounds. They're always wondering how I get my drums to sound as fat and funky as they do. Drums is my main instrument. The main
Cole's back here.
Cole's back there. Lynn John's method. Yeah. Or sort of. A hybrid of it. But these drums I started on when I was 7 years old. I've been playing that same drum set
That's amazing.
my whole life. So that's really part of the drum sound.
The Camcos.
Camcos, man.
Well, that's Daniel Lanois has a Camco as well, doesn't he?
Oh, does he?
Yeah.
Oh,
when we
man.
were there, he had a Camco.
They don't make
setup.
them anymore. And those are early Camcos from the early 60s before they adapted the round lugs, which then DW bought.
So D19 over the top.
D19 on the snare.
Yeah, that's a different looking one.
Well, that's an AKG D19. This is a Telefunken D19. Same thing. And I have another one of the Telefunkens.
Yeah.
Another one of the AKGs. And then I just bought Warm Audio's clone of the D19.
I like it.
It's pretty good. I mean, it sounds totally different than these, but none of them sound alike.
Yeah, no two sound the same.
No, they don't. And I just got back from NAMM where Bosphorus hooked me up with some new cymbals, those hi-hats over there, which were really fun to play while I was performing.
And you have
down there.
Istanbuls, which of course wonderful cymbals.
That was my first cymbal when I was a kid.
You started off with an Istanbul.
Yeah, well, I started off with these drums and cymbals. My dad was a drummer.
Okay.
Or still is a drummer.
So he had taste.
Yeah, we either had Camcos or Gretsch set up in our house. So I was very lucky to start on nice gear.
When I was a kid, I think every drummer I knew started off with the cheap pearls, the Maxwin.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Actually, the story of these drums, so my dad was a high school music teacher, and it was a private school in Rochester, New York, and that school was replacing these Camcos with those pearls you're talking about. And they used to have a garage sale every year. They called it the Harley sale. The school was called the Harley School. And my dad knew what those drums were. And he's like, I tell you what, I'll give you $20 for those. And I'll give you 25 if you throw the snare in that was behind it, which was a Radio King Slingerland. So for $25, he got the kick, the rack tom, and the matching snare, which is back there.
Yeah.
And then when I was 16 and getting pretty serious about drums and getting ready to audition for colleges and everything, he knew I needed my own drum set. And then I found a matching floor tom in Santa Cruz, actually, of all places, and ordered it on, do you remember this publication? It was called The Not So Modern Drummer.
No, but I love it.
And they had a classified ads in the back. And so I spent $400 on that floor tom.
Oh, look at this.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
78 Mustang.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, that's a favorite. John Patitucci likes that one when he comes by. That's a good bass. And then back here,
Yeah.
a B15N, 67.
67.
And I did actually have a D12 on here, but Universal Audio sent me a bunch of these mics, so I'm kind of checking out their
So far, so good?
their emulation. Yeah, it sounds great.
Hey.
It's hard. I mean, this amp sounds great, so it's,
We've got a whole Universal Audio video of all of their mics.
of all their mics. Yeah, I did some with the drums just to kind of
How did you feel?
them. It sounded pretty good. I actually used that same mic next to the D20, but it more emulated a D12, so it sounded different. The D20 is a lot fatter.
Yeah.
That actually came from Fantasy when they closed. I bought that microphone.
You ever had the D30?
No.
The big boy?
No, I've never come across it.
We used that, I think, on the Thrills record with Dave Sardi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it just looks like that, but on steroids.
Oh, shit, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. Amazing.
And then, of course, I like keyboards and guitars.
Periscope?
Oh, yeah.
They're fantastic, aren't they? Because they've got that sort of built-in limiting going.
So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, really fun to just blend in.
Yeah.
Especially in a good sounding room. This room sounds great. There's no ugly reflections in here. I mean, it sounds like a...
So do you ever do a Pet Sounds kind of thing and fit like the full band in here and brass and everything and cut it all at once?
No, I'm kind of taking up too much space as it is. It's really just set up for me. I mean, I bring in musicians on certain records. I produced Aloe Black's album last year, and that I had musicians coming in and out of here. But most people know me just for playing all the instruments myself, and so... Awesome. If you watch me on YouTube and do my weekly live stream, I'm just kind of moving around the room and playing all the various instruments.
Well, we will make sure we put a link to it. So, Paris Supros, is this a new one?
Those are actually identical amps, and they belong to my good buddy Eric Krasno, a great guitar player. I produced the last couple of records for him, and while we were working on his album, Phil Lesch's club, Terrapin, closed down, and he was keeping them there for any time he would guest spot. And so Phil's tech brought him over here. This was a couple of years ago. I moved in here with the Fenders. I've always been a Fender guy. Yeah. That's a Princeton reissue. And that's actually a 90s deluxe reverb that my brother actually had gutted and redone just like a vintage one. And that sounds like an old one. It sounds like a 60s.
Yeah, the Lux 65s are phenomenal, aren't they?
Yeah, they're fantastic. You can see I'm a little obsessed with the Beatles.
I see the Hofner, I see the Rickenbacker. Yeah, yeah.
3 violin, but this is kind of my main axe. I actually built this one when I was 20, and I've been, this is probably the instrument I use the most.
Oh, Bartolini's.
Yeah, I put the Bartolini's in 10 years ago. When I first built it, I just had some cheap Chinese pickups. This started off as a kit that Saga Instruments produced. The headstock was just like a box, so we had to cut it and shave it back here a little bit, but I never did a finish. I just used a wood buffer on it.
Love that.
Yeah. And then I put a different pick guard on it, and then I changed out the pots a couple of years ago.
Bit of Carol Kay kind of.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm into that funky, tight sound. All my basses have flat wounds on it, with exception to this Rickenbacker copy, the Aria. Do you know these guys?
Yeah, I love Aria. I mean, that when I was a kid, probably the same for you. That was pretty much one of 2 or 3 only affordable guitars that you could buy.
Exactly. Yeah, this is great. It's that same finish as the McCartney bass as well. And, of course, I'm a huge Yes fan and Chris Squire fan, but it doesn't have the stereo.
Sure.
The, what do they call that? The Rico or something?
Rico sound, I think.
Rico sound,
I think it was, yeah.
But it's funky. Got 3 different violin basses. Only one real Hofner, but this is like the kind of like the first one that was given to Paul that got stolen. Do you know about that story?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And he got it back recently. So they started remaking these back in like the early 2000s. That's what this is.
Yeah, we bought a reissue as well. We love it. It's great.
It's great. It's great. But actually, my favorite of all the violin basses that I own is this Japanese one from the 70s.
The National.
A National, but not to be confused with the Resonator guitar company that makes.
Yes.
But this guy is sweet, and I just really love this tortoiseshell pickguard. And
70s Japanese guitars just across the board, acoustics, basses, electrics, everything, are superb.
Superb.
Absolutely
They're great.
superb.
And I kind of like that it's a bolt-on neck as opposed to glued-on, because it's just more balanced. It's not top-heavy like my other 2. Yeah. Although this guy is cool. The J. Tercer, that's just like a
The Hofner was never an expensive instrument.
No, not at all.
I mean, I know they're worth thousands if they're original, but they were affordable.
They were affordable.
The Beatles were playing them in Hamburg for a reason. It's what they could afford.
And to complete the whole Beatles bass thing, of course, I got a bass 6 here.
Yeah, lovely.
Although I was just playing, do you know Nova Guitars? Mm-hmm. Did you see them? Were you at NAMM?
We were at NAMM, yeah.
Did you go by their booth at all?
We didn't. We spent more time in Pro Audio, unfortunately.
So they made a 6-string, like a bass 6 style thing, and it feels quite a bit better than this.
Wow.
It was a lot easier to play. It's also not as heavy as this, too. I really, really enjoyed playing it, and hoping to check it out some more. And then, of course, I've got some great instruments. This is a Mark I 69 Rhodes.
Amazing.
I got this actually from the school I used to teach at in Berkeley at the Jazz Conservatory. Yeah, and it's just
beautiful sounding.
It's pretty dialed in. In fact,
it's a shame we only got these little tiny mics on it, but that is gorgeous sounding.
Do you know this? The Wurlitzer 700. This is from the early or late 50s. 58 maybe? It's basically the same engine as a Wurlitzer 120, which was like the Ray Charles, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's wonderful.
It's a great.
They're both very clean. This in particular, I didn't know it was on.
Yeah.
Very clean.
Yeah, this one you can kind of hear.
You can hear that, yeah.
But actually, I need to switch out some of the tubes in it because it doesn't sound as fat as it's supposed to sound.
Yeah, but this is clean as a whistle.
Yeah, in fact, the guy that serviced this for me before I moved in here, he tried to buy it from me after servicing it.
I've never heard one this clean. But did you know that was on before he played it?
Yeah, it's such a great instrument. I love it. The vibrato is beautiful. I love the suitcases because I like the speakers on this side and the speakers on that side.
Yeah, I agree.
They're great. And then this is an A100 over here.
Lovely.
And the Leslie is actually all the way in the back corner. And then I just use those giant gobos to kind of make it an isolated room. It's not on, but we can turn it on.
Yeah, I want to hear it.
Although you won't hear the Leslie, but it has its own cabinet, so we can...
Can you hear this one, Eric?
Does it sound like an engine? Pulling up here. All right, so we'll come to this side. Not quite the same thing as you can hear it. There it comes on all the way in the back. But it's, it sounds good down here. And then, obviously the Juno 106, that's not running through right now. And actually, I have to service that guy. And then the 6-track made by Sequential, that came out the year I was born, 1983.
Wow.
Yeah, great synthesizer. And I just run all that stuff in mono. And then, of course, lots more shit in here. I have a pretty funky workflow, which is why I started going live on my channel when I wanted to show people this room.
Yeah.
But when I moved in here is when I first started checking out Ableton.
Yeah.
And I came across this artist out I want to say he's out in the Netherlands. His name is Bink Beats, and he would upload these videos of him recreating like classic hip hop beats by like Jay Dilla and Madlib, but he was doing it all with live instruments. Nice. But he was so quick the way he was looping, but I wasn't seeing, how with a looping pedal, you have to hit it on the way in and on the way out, but he wasn't doing that. He was just hitting it once, maybe laying down 2 bars of drums, and it would loop back, and then he might play 4 bars of bass. I was like, how is this guy doing this? And then I saw some people commenting, well, it must be Ableton, but you can't see his computer.
Right.
And then finally Ableton did an interview with him. And then he talked about this plugin that he and his friends built in the Max for Live software.
Oh, wow.
And they call it the Bink Looper.
Yeah.
And he was giving it away for free on his website. So I downloaded Ableton Suite and got the Bink Looper. Didn't know how to use Ableton, and I've been using Pro Tools for 22 years, so it was very foreign to me. But what I was able to do is essentially turn my whole recording studio into like one giant looping pedal. And I walk around the room with my iPad.
Yeah.
And I use this software called Touchable Pro.
Yeah.
And basically, my template inside Ableton with everything mic'd up and ready to go is I could sit down at the drums, and I have it templated for 4 bars, 8 bars, or 16 bars. Usually I do the 16 bars. And are you familiar with Ableton?
Enough.
Okay, so
Enough
in clip view, they call it scenes. Like all the way to the left, there's like scene 1, scene 2, but I just think of it like, A section, B section, C section, right?
Nice.
And so I would lay down 16 bars, and to me, that's not a loop. That's like a section of music, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then what's happening is it's coming back right away. I press the button, and in 1 measure's time, it record enables it. It sets the loop length. It launches it. And if I don't like what I did, I press it again, it deletes the whole thing and starts over the process in 1 measure. And so as soon as I'm done playing, it's playing back. And I'm like, oh, that sounds great. And it's weirdly old school because I'm not seeing WAV files or anything. And generally, if I play something and I stop and then I walk back to the control room, that's enough time for me to sabotage the whole thing, because I'll start to procrastinate and we're like, oh shit, it's not good, But when I hear it back right away, I'm like, wow, this is cool. I'm going to move over to the bass now, and I'll lay it down. And so I'll work on 1 section at a time and then piece it together. Nice. And once I figured out that workflow, it was like, oh man, now it's like a faucet's just turned on and it's not going off. And then I set up the camera setup, and now people watch me do that. And so I start everything in Ableton, and I move really fast. Yeah. And now I edit it in Ableton because I've learned how to edit in that program. But I still bring everything back to Pro Tools. This is something that I did on one of those live streams. And
that's so cool.
And I was just actually running it through. So this is a custom-made console that was made for me. You can see it's got my logo in there. There's this guy locally. His name is Cesar Deli. He's out in Oakland. This guy makes microphones. He makes preamps. He makes EQs. Yeah. And he made me a console, and he also makes cymbals. So like, what could be better for a drummer who likes to record? And so he made me this custom console that was built for my workflow and to integrate into the Apollo architecture.
What's his name again?
His name is Cesar Deli.
Cesar Deli.
Correct.
Okay.
And so he designed each one of these 500 modules. He hand wired them. These are kind of like vintage API 312 flavor. It's not an API because it's his own circuitry, but it's it's got more of that punchy aesthetic to it. But the mastering section over here is almost kind of like a quad 8 kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And what he did is gave me 3 aux sends, which right now I'm running over there to this old funky spring reverb, as well as I have this delay, this tonal recall made by Chase Bliss. And so I can send my drums. All right, so actually what's really beautiful about this is, so you got your record levels up here.
Yep.
Your input transformer, right? And so on the input side, you can switch it to line level, and then all of a sudden it's outputting and it's only going through the output transformer. So, like large format consoles are large because one side is tracking, one side is mixing, but I don't have to mess with my input settings. I can just quickly flip over and start summing in the box. I can insert these EQs, and so they are full channel strips, but my desk isn't that big, so we just decided to do it this way,
Okay.
And then on the back side, he added 16 more channels of D-sub.
Okay.
So I can actually sum up to 26 channels on this little console.
Wow.
And run it all through the mastering section. And then I have a master insert as well, and that can go to this. And this is kind of like a SSL 4000 style compressor. This was just some guy I found on Reverb. It was like a kit. I don't even know the name of the fella, but it is really great sounding. Excellent. And so I can right now I'm running the drums through here, just through this channel. And let's see, this is kind of like mastering grade EQs. They sound real good. We could add some high end, make it nice and crispy. That's those drums you see out there. And then we could send it to the reverb. Yeah, just
Which reverb's this?
This is that spring, that Sansui. You see on top right here. So, yeah, and so you can adjust this. This would make it tighter. You can see the colors are tighter, right? And it starts to open it up. This is staying.
And this would have been for hi-fi.
For hi-fi systems.
Because if you wanted reverb on your hi-fi.
Yeah, because who doesn't want to add reverb to records that didn't want you to add it? But then it's fun to kind of dub things out a little bit. You ever play with these guys? Chase
No.
Bliss? They make really, really cool stuff. That's actually in time. Yeah, I mean, it's a delay. Yeah, you can sync it up and do all kinds of fun stuff. But then we could just monitor through the mastering section. And that's where we get into this guy. Yeah, there you go. Actually, let's go over to 10. Yeah, that's probably where I would have it. Oh, yeah. It's wonderful. We take it out. Bring it back in.
Using the twin for everything? What?
No. The twin is just kind of like my main control. No, over here I have an Apollo 16. Okay. 16X.
Yep.
And then an X8P.
Yep.
And then this was the first one I got years ago, and it's still in there. Everything's chained together.
Great.
But yeah, the main interface is the X16. I'm running in through there.
I can't help noticing that you do have a Linn drum up here.
I do have a Linn drum.
How did you get a hold of this?
It's not passed in right now, but obviously I'm a big funk head. I love Prince and everything. Yeah. I love Phil Collins. Yep. I love Michael Jackson. I made some tracks like that with some Linn drum emulations back when I was first creating music for the YouTube audio library. Yeah. In 2016, the San Francisco Chronicle did an article on me. And one of my fans that used my music a lot happened to live in San Francisco, had no idea I lived in San Francisco. He emailed me and he said, hey, look, I'm a big fan of your music. I have something that I think you would like, and I would like to give it to you. Wow. And he had this sitting in his closet, and he brought it over to my house and gave me the Linn drum. They only made a couple thousand of these. Yeah. And it didn't work. Whole thing it powered up, but it didn't work. I contacted Roger Linn because he lives in Berkeley across the bay. And I said, hey, do you know how I can fix these things? And he put me in touch with this guy, Bruce Forat, down in Studio City. Do you know Bruce? Bruce Forat. I think that's how you pronounce it. Forat. Okay. So this guy was...
Forat as Forat.
Forat.
Yeah. He invented the Forat machine.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
I know who he is.
And
Yeah,
he
yeah.
also worked on the original Lynn drum.
Yeah.
So that's why Roger put me in touch with him.
He's a genius. So he had like this huge sample playback machine that all the guys used in the late 80s and early 90s. So all those big records that had drum samples on were all triggered by the 4-at.
Oh, get out of
Yeah,
here.
that guy's a genius.
So, and he was
Dave Jordan
he was Quincy Jones' drum machine tech. He was Prince's drum machine tech.
Very smart guy.
So he brought the whole thing back to life
Incredible.
for me. And,
what a lovely
and
story.
then he added extra tuning knobs for me so I could tune the side stick separately from the snare. And then he added MIDI on the side. And so yeah, I can run MIDI. And a lot of times when I'm programming it, I'm actually doing it from over here using the Arturia Beat Step. Shout out to Arturia. They sent that out to me a few years ago. Because with Ableton or Pro Tools or anything, you can now program it infinitely. Yeah. However, I did just buy the Behringer LM drum.
And?
I mean, it sounds exactly like mine.
Does it?
Yeah. Well, Bruce, he actually burned me proms from the LM1, and then he made it interchangeable so I could take out the Lynn drum or the LM1 chips and put them in there. Yeah, and it sounded great, and it's got pads on it, so it kind of feels a little nicer.
Rather than just on-off buttons.
Buttons, yeah. And it's really thin, and so much smaller than that, and it's only $400, so it was like, it's kind of almost like a disposable Lynn drum. I hate to say that. That's a very first world thing to say. Yeah. However, that thing I could sell for a lot of money. I would never sell it because it was a gift to me.
No.
And
it's a work of art.
So what I would do is probably put it away in a case and let people know. I mean, people know I have it. Kanye West has rented that from me before. Yeah. I've been producing one of Nicholas Payton's latest albums, and we've been using that thing. Like, if people want to use it, I'll pull it out. But if I'm going to use something over and over, I'll check out the Behringer for a little bit and see what that's like.
Amazing. This is like my childhood.
That's my childhood too. I started on that machine when I was 11 years old, and I still have my tapes from when I was. I started on this tape machine and this drum machine, the Yamaha.
Is that RX-11, RX-7?
RX-5.
RX-5. Look at you. You were posh. The first one I ever had was actually my bass player's, was an RX-21, I think it was.
Oh, is that right?
Which was about this big.
Oh, okay.
But it was still great. I mean, when this came out, it was like, oh my God.
It was revolutionary.
Yeah, it was just like, actually sounded like a drum.
Yeah.
It didn't go boom, bish,
yes.
bish. It actually went boom.
And it does that kind of 12-bit degrading sound like you can do with the Lynn drum too, which is cool.
But fraction of a cost.
Oh my gosh, way cheaper. Yeah, my dad, that was my dad's machine, and that tape machine was his, and he started teaching me how to use all this stuff, and I caught the bug really early.
Nice.
And then, of course, because I was obsessed with the Beatles, I just wanted to become a recording artist and producer and do all those things.
Oh, this brings back so much memories.
Yeah. Great preamps down here. I got these from Fantasy. These are Neve 1073s that were pulled out of the console with the original cards. So James Gangwer, who was their house technician, he built a lot of their stuff, their rack mount stuff that was modular.
Right.
And so when Fantasy closed, he retired and sold off his equipment. So the D20 was his, the Neve 1073s. I got these for $4,000.
Nice. Four of them.
4 of them.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And so I moved in here with those, and then V72s. These are Siemens. And these are clones of those, actually, the Stam ones. Have you seen these?
I haven't. Are they any good?
Yeah, they're great. They sound pretty identical, which is great, and obviously a fraction of the cost, although I still use these. My kick drum is running through those, and then the microphone on the bass guitar amp.
They definitely have a low-end thump, don't they?
Oh, yeah,
They're
man. I used to run my kick drum through one channels of these, and then I kind of A-beat it, and I was like, wow, this is much more that sound that I want. It's kind of fat and almost like throaty, because of that tube sound. And then these are great, the PM1000s, Yamaha.
Yeah, I remember them well.
Yeah, those were modified for me. The EQ section was modified just to have the same EQ curve
as
a 1073.
Fet sounds.
Yes, exactly.
Is it the Feach Boys?
But I think I might actually get rid of those. I haven't been using them ever since I got these EQs made for me to go with my console.
Yeah.
But I really loved, especially the way it would saturate and get nutty sounding.
Yeah, growing up, we're talking about the Maxwins or this affordable gear, the Japanese guitars of that period. Yeah. They're all amazing now.
Yeah, what do they call it? The Japanese? Right?
Japanese.
Yeah, that was the nickname for it.
Hey, if it's sounding good. What else you got hiding down here? Rhythm Ace?
Oh, yeah, man, the Rhythm Ace. That's like the early analog drum machine, if you like Sly Stone.
Yeah.
That's this guy is pretty great.
What's the one we have, Eric? Is it the Rhythm King?
Rhythm King, yeah.
Oh, the Rhythm King.
Yeah, and it's
that's
like
the big one.
Yeah, and it's like beep, beep, beep,
that actually is the Sly Stone one. That's what he used.
Yeah, we have
but
one of those.
This has like a lot of the similar presets. This kind of started the whole sound, the Otis McDonald sound for me. Back in 2012, 2013, I was on the road with Mickey Hart from the Grateful Dead. I was the lead singer and organ player in his band.
Okay. Nice.
But I would play synthesizers and stuff. So anytime we'd have days off, I would go to like Guitar Center and check out this instrument. I was really interested in it, and I never bought it until that band ended, and I started making all this music under Otis McDonald. I was like, oh, I need a cool analog synth, and this is the sound of all the early shit for me, and actually kind of my go-to mono analog synth if I need something. It's such a great instrument. The fact that you can save your settings is really, really great. Arturia sent this big guy to me a few years ago, the Matrix Brute, which, to be honest, I haven't spent a lot of time learning it because it
does look like a bit of a learning curve.
It is huge, man. But I have it set up with MIDI through this just to kind of like expand the board on this one. Yeah. I love this, and this is kind of my favorite synth that I use.
Hey, if you know it well.
This thing is really cool, the Behringer Poly D. You know, it's kind of modeled after a Mini Moog, but it's paraphonic as opposed to polyphonic.
Paraphonic.
Do you know what paraphonic means?
You tell me.
All right, so if we have it set over here on poly, it's not actually poly, but you'll notice anytime I hit a note, it activates an oscillator, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's kind of wild, right, is if you adjust these to match. All right, so we have a C major 7 chord. Ooh, it sounds out of tune, right? It is analog.
Yeah.
Now, what's really cool is it will assign the oscillator based on the order in which you hit it. So if I hit it like, say, starting on E, and now the C is going down there, and the G's there. But what happens is every time you change it, or I'm sorry, every time you hit that same chord over and over, it's going to adjust to each voice or each oscillator differently. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, let's go up here. So I'm just hitting the same position, C major 7, and you hear it moving all around. Well, then you can get really crazy if you just start changing the range and you change the sine wave or the waveform. Oh, I'm sorry, it's so distorted. And then you can get in here. It's got a Juno style chorus on it. God, that sounds so out of tune though. That sounds better. So you really have to tune each one of them. There we go. Yeah, isn't that cool? It's such an interesting thing. So you could play some sort of chord progression that you are used to playing, but it's going to come back sounding completely different. And then if you add the portamento to it, you can get all kinds of wild vibes. So it's cool. I mean, it feels
and being
cheaper
Behringer is probably pennies.
Yes, I think it's like $500. And then I've got underneath here.
What do you got hiding under here? Oh, okay.
A Prophet Rev 2. Yeah, this is kind of I use this as a MIDI controller as well.
Yep.
So I figured if I'm going to spend money on a MIDI controller, why not spend money on an analog synth that has nice key beds in it?
Right.
But it's great, and it's always all
Sequential are a local company, aren't they?
They are. They're over in North Beach, just here in the city. And so you can get into, I've been making my own sounds, I like that kind of bubbly sound. Let's see, what is another one I just made? Yeah, for all the lo-fi lovers. See, I call it lo-fi. Yeah, it gets pretty funky sounding. Yeah, this thing is, I'm starting to understand it a little bit more after spending some time with Sequential and checking out all their other instruments like the Prophet 5 or the 10. I was like, man, I kind of want one of those. But it was really just because I instantaneously got a sound that I wanted. This is a much deeper synthesizer, so it's taking me some time to learn how to use it. But thank God to YouTube University, I've been learning a lot more about its functionality, and it's a great instrument, and it's a great MIDI controller as well.
Beautiful.
And then if you want to see one other cool, funky little guy, you remember Ann Peebles?
Of course.
I can't stand the rain.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so that drum machine, the Mika Sonic electric bongos, that's what this is modeled after. So we get... So I'm using the trigger out into this. And this guy in Brooklyn, he built this thing. He found the schematic. Well, his buddy actually had a Mika Sonic. So he opened it up, and there was a schematic in there. And he, obviously he could look at the schematic and look at the machine and trace it back and forth. But he also put the mutes in it as well. So I actually kind of like it more open.
Yeah.
But because it's in here, I can step sequence it and create these really kind of funky patterns. And then I'll go out and play the drums to that and get all these really...
So cool.
Yeah, it's a funny vibe. It's pretty fun.
What we've got going on here, we have some 560As.
Oh, yeah. Gosh, man, to be quite honest, I don't even mess around over here anymore.
No, you moved past that?
Well, some guy sent me this EQ, which is all, it's all based on tilts, which is really cool.
Okay.
And I've messed with it. Well, these actually are on loan. These compressors are on loan from Studio C. They just brought them over here because they weren't using them, and they saw I had a 500 rack here.
This is nice for a little extra on the kick. This is
really cool.
Little
Yeah, so I've used this on the kick or on the bass guitar.
Yeah.
I'm a big Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers fan, and I know they were using these in the 80s when they were working with like Jeff Lynne and stuff. So, so that actually is kind of what got me interested in that. And then, of course, I love 1176. I thought Clark Technic did a really nice job with this. I mean, it sounds like an 1176. It's just not as noisy as the old ones.
And not as expensive.
Not nearly as expensive. Yeah. Do you know about these guys, though?
What is this?
So Brand New Noise is this company. This was an example of Facebook or Instagram ads going incredibly right for me. I came across these guys. So this is like a little sampler. So check this out. I could go like all right. And so if it's on this switch, if it's over here, it just plays one time, but you can loop it. It wasn't a great loop, but it's based on how much light gets into this little laser here. Watch. So the less light, it goes down. The more light, it goes up in pitch. And then it has an output jack. And now this box right here is kind of similar.
Yeah.
But let's see, what do I... All right, so this is me singing. So this has like a delay built into it. But then it also... You can pitch down, pitch up. But if you are looping it, playing back the loop, and you press record... Here, let me turn the delay off. This will scrub it. So you could kind of like scratch, you know? And then they make this other cool guy.
What's the name of the company?
Brand New Noise.
Brand New Noise.
Yeah. And then they make this big guy back here. This one is really cool. So it's a tongue drum. You flip it up here to record. You come back here. And then it's got a pitch up. And then it's got a delay. Yeah. See, I like to make samples and then chop it up and put it in Serato sample, and then that acts as like the conductor for me, and then I run around the room and start playing all the various instruments. So I'm always looking for great ways to start some sort of randomness that I can just use my ears and react to it as I would if I was improvising with a group of musicians on stage.
That's amazing.
And that's how I do it. And that's how I make all this stuff. Like this track up here was made on a live stream. So it started with me making a sample that, and I'm using like a Mellotron flute. So the first part of it, you watch me make the sample, and then usually in the beginning of the track, I'll give it to you so you can hear it, but then I chop it up in Serato sample and it becomes this. Like this is the sample that I chopped up. I pitched it down. It's got this guy in there, obviously. And then I just go out and play all the other instruments to it. Live drums, live keys, live bass. Oh, I put guitar on this one too. And this is going out to Meta, to their sound collection. So I do the live streams just to kind of hold myself accountable to make something new every week, you know?
That's amazing.
Because I also have tons of deadlines for other artists that I'm working with and everything and different projects, but I like to do these live streams because I know, like, all right, I'll have a new Otis track, I can sell it to Meta, and then I can also put it out on, you know, Spotify and make records out of it. And yeah, that's my sound. But that's those drums out there. All in everything's just mixed in the box right now. No analog summing. Yeah, but those drums sound good, right?
That's fantastic.
That's that Periscope. Nice and crunchy. Big sounds. Yeah, and I've been messing with. Do you know about this guy? This Air Windows. So obviously have to open it up into this thing. Like the most unflattering looking plugins. This is maybe the coolest tape plugin I've actually messed with. It is so good.
Is it recorded in doubly?
Yeah. Exactly.
Hopefully people are getting the Spinal Tap reference there, yeah.
So you can download all his plugins for free. The whole thing is free. And
Who is this guy? All right.
Well, I just know his company's called Air Windows, but you can find him on YouTube demonstrating all his stuff. And this 2-tape 7, man.
Just going to get a photo so I don't forget.
Yeah. Like
Air Windows.
Check this out. Like if I'm...
So using Blue Cat Patchwork to...
Yeah, to run it inside Pro Tools. I wish Pro Tools could do VSTs.
That guy Guillaume's great.
Yeah.
French guy.
Oh, yeah, that does Blue Cat?
Yeah, he's awesome.
All right, so, like, I love messing with the bias in this.
Already amazing.
Already amazing, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that it has a head bump on it, like an old machine, you can really get a lot out of it. And that just kind of makes it almost linear.
Yeah.
Like, just listen to what that would do to that track. Yeah. If I took away the sample. I should have done this actually for a section.
Oh. It's so good.
And I think that's the... I have one album that I put out on vinyl.
Yeah.
Do you listen to records?
Of course.
Oh, let me give you one before you leave. It's an album I put out in 2019, so it was actually before I had this studio. The only thing I did on that record in here the only thing I did in here on that record was record horns. It was the first thing I did when I got here.
Wow.
But the rest of it, like the drum sounds were from my old bedroom, so it's not quite as good sounding as I got it now. But it's still, I'm very proud of that record. Amazing. And I had Bernie Grumman master it and everything. So
wonderful.
Yeah, and that was a fun process to make that record because I had already kind of built up a big YouTube following at the time, and I decided to in 2019 I released 15 snippets once a week, just a 1-minute snippet of 15 different song ideas. Wow. And I was like, you vote on which ones I should put out as an album, and I'll do it based on likes, comments, and that whole bag. And I really, I went in and measured it all, and I'm like, all right, these 10 songs were the ones that everybody picked. And so I put out an album and I called it People Music. Also a nod to Herbie Hancock, a great song called People Music. But I was like, the people helped me make this shit. You guys are helping me create a career. And then I put that out in December 2019 and was getting ready to play a bunch of shows, and then the whole world shut down. So wasn't the best timing. But in 2020, I started releasing a new song every Friday on Spotify, and I started doing that, and it really helped. The numbers started to take off.
Amazing.
And now I'm starting to run ads on my songs and a playlist. I'm just trying a whole new strategy, and I talk about it all the time on my live stream, just to tell everybody, like, look, you can make a living doing all this shit. You got to do all the jobs that a label would do for you.
Oh, I know. We know.
Yeah, but you end up, look, this is an astronomically expensive city to live in, and somehow, I have 2 kids.
Where do you guys live?
We live in Potrero Hill, which is, in the city.
Yeah.
It's just south of the downtown area. Yeah. It's up in the hill. It's beautiful. We've lived over there for 14 years, and we have 2 kids.
Great.
And we have an apartment and have a studio, and our kids are eating, and we're eating as well. So can't complain.
Thank you ever so much.
Thanks,
Jotis. Is that
Jotis,
what you say?
Jotis. Yeah. Otis McDonald. Yeah. Check me out, please.
There will be a link down below, and we'll come back and do something.